Does it have an expiration date?
It does. It's just only this one.
Yeah, maybe did avoid that one.
All right, we've got 6 p.m. We want to welcome everybody. We'll go ahead and get started. We'd like to begin our meeting with the Pledge of Allegiance. I've asked Commissioner Wilden to lead us this evening. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America. There it is. And the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right. Thank you, Commissioner Wilden. And it looks like this evening we are just missing Commissioner Mann. Is she not going to be present this evening? Have we heard from her? Okay. We'll keep our fingers crossed here for a moment. There's no such thing as traffic in Saratoga Springs, so we'll wait. We now have time for public input. I'll remind the public that items that are up for public hearing, you can speak then as well to those items. So anything that is not on the agenda that you would like to make a comment on this evening, time is now yours for the public. Hearing none, we're going to go ahead and close public comment at this time. Welcome, Commissioner Mann. Glad to have you here. And we'll move to item number 1 under public hearings, amendments to Title 19 Land Development Code of the City of Saratoga Springs, Chapters 1902, Definitions 1916, Site and Architectural Design Standards, and 1918 Sign Regulations, City initiated. Hold on one sec.
Hear me? Now I think you can hear me. Okay, great. Well, good evening. So this is just city-initiated code amendment to kind of clarify the building facade in 1902, 1916, and 1918. So what it will do is the definition for building facade was in the sign code for 1918. So we're going to remove that and move it to 1902 in definitions. And we're just clarifying that the facade will not include the roof. And then in the architecture design standards, it clarifies the building facade. Some of it didn't have building facade, it just had a facade, so we're just making it more clear, as well as making sure that when counting a certain amount of colors and materials, that the roof will not be part of that, will not be considered a material or a color. So just to clarify that, and that is mainly what we are proposing. And that's all that we have.
Excellent, thank you. This is a matter of public hearing. Is there anyone in the public that would like to make a comment on this matter? Hearing none, we're going to go ahead and close public comment, and I will open it up to the commissioners for comment.
Sam, we saw this maybe a month ago, and we tabled it because there was just a little bit of tweaking to be done. As I was reading it, I agree with it. I think there is direction and clarity here. But I did read at the very top that it said that as it relates to the general plan, this is the commonly preferred vision. And that was, to me, kind of a vague statement. Could you kind of share with me where that vision came from? Is that just through the process of city council and staff in the general plan?
Yeah, Sarah, do you have any more comment on that, kind of with the vision of that?
It doesn't really get into it very specifically. The vision in there is quality architecture. And so that's part of why we just said that it's consistent with the vision.
Okay. Yeah, it just seemed to be a certain wording that I didn't comprehend everything around what that was. So thank you.
And one of the biggest things too is it's more consistent with the sign code and clarifying that that if the sign goes to the roof portion, that will not be considered. We don't count that as part of the building facade as the 8%. So just to clarify our sign code as well.
Yeah, I've seen many cities that don't have this kind of clarity and signs on the roof all over the place, and I think this just tightens that all up.
Yeah.
Is that it, Commissioner Hill?
Thank you, yes.
Awesome, thank you. Commissioner Kilgore.
Just wondering, so why the change to eliminate the roof at this point, and why was it there before? Yeah, why the change to eliminate the roof at this point, and why was it there before?
Yeah.
We didn't specify that the roof wouldn't be considered. So the code requires a minimum of 2 colors and materials and a maximum of 4 colors and materials. And we as planners assumed that meant the building materials and not, architectural shingles on a pitched roof. However, we had an issue come up recently where that was challenged. This is why we're adding the change, so that we don't face that issue again.
Okay, so I guess to go along with Commissioner Hill's question, I guess the vision was not to include, it just wasn't clarified in the code.
Right.
Okay.
We had never intended to clarify it in the code. However, we had never been challenged before. And then once we were challenged, we wanted to clean up the language to avoid that in the future.
And I noticed that mansard roof was removed. So if a building does have a mansard roof, what do you do with that whole roof portion? Is that going to be counted or not counted?
It would not be counted. We would just consider that, even though we didn't clarify mansard roof, we just put that in the category of roof.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Hey, Commissioner Mangum.
Thank you. So historically, when somebody's building a house, have you just said that it's never been challenged, so nobody's ever tried to say the roof is a different color or material? If somebody's trying to save money and build a house with 2 materials, historically, have they considered the roof as one of the colors? Or are you saying no, they haven't?
The good thing about this code is it does not apply to single family. We're not actually allowed to regulate family and
Got
have
it.
requirements for them. So this would apply to multifamily and commercial.
Okay, thank
So
you.
bigger structures that have a bigger visual impact. And we're trying to avoid one solid material.
That makes sense. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Any additional comments? Commissioner Sposton Burns? No, I'm ready to make a motion. Awesome, I'd be happy to entertain a motion.
I'll move. Based on the evidence and the explanations received today, I move to recommend approval of the proposed amendment to Title 19 with the findings and conditions in the staff report. There are 4 findings, no conditions.
Excellent, thank you, Commissioner Hill. We have a motion, do we have a second?
I'll second that.
Thank you, Commissioner Sposton Burns. We have a second. Any additional discussion on the matter? Hearing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you. All right, we will go ahead and move on to item number 2 under public hearings. This is amendments to Title 19, Land Development Code of the City of Saratoga Springs, Chapter 1904, Establishment of Land Use Zones and Official Map, City Initiated.
This last year sometime, and we took it back and we had some stuff we had to work on. We figured the easiest way to do this is just that last footnote 3 there, where you just allow the buildings in the same zones, as long as they're non-residential, to be able to have that 0-foot setback. And adding the 0-foot setback means they have 0 or they have the 10-foot that's allowed normally. So we didn't have to put too much verbiage in that. And then we added in there that it has to go along with the International Building Code. We already have one building in the city that's like this, but it was through a community plan and village plan. So if you look, Hobby Lobby's its own lot, and then Ross and the rest of them are butted up against it. So that's essentially what we're trying to do, is for somebody to be able to make a big, long commercial building or whatever and be able to sell off individually. And does anybody have any questions for me?
Thank you for that. Before we get to that, this is an item of public, is that the end of the presentation?
Yeah.
Okay. Ended the presentation from the city. Thank you. And this is an item of public hearing. Are any members of the public present that would like to comment on this item? Hearing none, we'll go ahead and close public comment and open it up to commissioners for questions. All right. Jesus must be coming soon because this is a first. That's impressive. This is the new chairmanship right here. Look at this, sleek and fast. All right. And I'll get struck down for my blasphemy later. It's perfect. Okay, I'm happy to entertain a motion then.
I move that the Planning Commission forward a recommendation of approval for the proposed code amendment to Title 19, Chapter 1904, with the findings and conditions in the staff report.
Thank you, Commissioner Sprossy Burns. We have a motion. Do we have a second?
I'll second that.
Thank you, Commissioner Wilden. We have a motion and a second. Any additional discussion on the matter? Hearing none, we'll take a vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. Thank you.
Thanks.
Okay, we're now on to item number 3 under the public hearing. This is the Cliff Lake Neighborhood Plan located approximately at the southwest corner of Pioneer Crossing and Keith Lindstrom as the applicant.
Thank you, Chair. So this was rezoned mixed residential back in July 2022 with the condition that it would be ratified with the master development agreement. And part of a master development agreement is this neighborhood plan, which takes place or carries over to the mixed residential portion of the property. So here's a location, and you can see the distinction between the neighborhood plan, kind of the southwest portion of the development, and the commercial area, to the northwest portion. The density is 8.25 units per acre, and the overall acreage is 86.86. This is just another graphic kind of showing you the distinction between the area of the neighborhood plan with the commercial area. This is just showing the parks and amenities plan and the open space plan. I just put these in here for reference if we have any particular questions. And the landscape plan. So the density in the mixed residential, the limit is 8 units per acre, but it does give a provision that you can increase up to 2 units per acre if the property is adjacent to a future or existing transit stop or corridor, and opportunities are provided in the neighborhood plan for commercial uses that support transit consistent with, and that's, I believe, it's supposed to be consistent with development standards in the mixed residential zone. So the application states that they're working with UTA in securing this transit site for a bus station, but we have no documentation yet. This is the approximate location of the bus station or the bus site, and that's just on the commercial property, not technically part of the neighborhood plan. The code allows certain modifications, and the application is asking for some of these following modifications, to the code. They'd like to substitute evergreen trees with deciduous trees. They would like some parking reductions, and they'd like some setback reductions, some for the senior attached, amending the front setback from 20 to 15 feet, and along the rear load townhomes to amend the setback requirement for the front setback from 20 feet to 10.5. And then they're requesting to have a flat roof in the multifamily or the senior apartment. This is a parking matrix. I know it's probably a little bit hard to read. Maybe hopefully you've been able to read a little better in your packet, just kind of showing the under the current code, the requirements, and what the application is currently showing. So they're fairly close on some of the product mix, and the others, there's some question marks of how much parking is actually being provided. This is the copy of the parking plan that was in your packet. So we have, the typical 3 options for recommendations. A recommendation to approve, recommendation to continue, a recommendation for denial. And I'd be glad to address any questions you might have. And of course, the applicant is here.
Thank you for the presentation. We'll allow if the applicant is present, if you'd like to come and add to the presentation, we would invite you to do so now. As you come and sit down here at this chair, if you don't mind stating your name and your address for the record.
My name's Keith Lindstrom. Our address is 791 North 100 East in Lehigh. So just a couple things to expand on this. Kent, thanks for doing that for us.
Where do you want to go?
Oh, I don't need to go through the stuff. So this is a project we've been working on for quite a while, a couple of years with the city, trying to get everything just how everybody wants it. And, we've had a lot of discussion with council, mayor, staff, just everybody trying to get everything figured out on it. So we do feel that we've come to a really good product that we have out here. When it does come to the parking, and a few things that we've got there is when we started, there was, different parking requirements. And so we started kind of on that path, going to figure out what kind of parking we had. And we do have ample parking in pretty much everything that we've got. All of our driveways are long enough to support cars and driveways. A lot of people are doing the shorter driveways now. Ours aren't. We're, I believe, 20 feet and then sidewalk after that. So we've got ample room for parking and driveways. We've got 2 car garages on everything that we're doing. All of our streets are the standard, city standard roads, except for a couple rear alley streets just for park or for garages. But everything else is city standard. And then with the senior apartment, we've got another senior apartment in Pleasant Grove where we've done a lot of research, and we've actually worked with that city quite a bit, where we found out that with senior apartments, the 1.25 parking stalls per unit there is ample parking, which is what we've kind of mimicked here with the senior apartment that we're going to be putting in here. So that's kind of where our parking's at. And then Kent was talking about the flat roof. When you're doing an apartment building and you've got 200 units, it's really an eyesore if you've got all the condensers and AC units down on the main level and kind of eating up the facade. So our plan is to put all of our condensing units on the roof, and so we need to have a flat roof and parapets to hide all of that to make that an attractive building as well. So that's my additions.
Thank you.
Thank you. We appreciate you being here, present tonight to add to the presentation. This is a matter of public hearing, so would be happy to entertain any comments from the public regarding this. Hearing none. I do believe we received public comment as well, which was in the packet on this item. So make note of that. So thank you. We'll now turn it over to the commissioners for comment and questions. Commissioner Kilgore.
Okay, thank you. So parts of this application is administrative and parts are legislative. Is that right? So I guess I'm not really clear which ones are administrative and which ones are.
Is part of the master development agreement, and the master development agreement is legislative. So the code requires that the neighborhood plan have a public hearing before the planning commission, and the overall master development agreement also be heard by the planning commission and then forwarded to the city council.
Okay.
And all of the items, I'm trying to get to the right. All of these, so deciduous trees, parking, setbacks, and roof would all be legislative.
Okay. Okay, thank you for that. And then for the administrative sections, does the applicant agree to comply with all the conditions in the city planning staff packet?
Yeah, we feel we're in compliance with everything. There was a couple typos on the neighborhood plan that you guys received that we needed to fix when it came to building height. But other than that, we believe that we're in compliance with everything.
Okay. For the UTA confirmation letter, when's the ETA for that?
Well, we've been talking with UTA and working on, where good master transportation routes could be in the future. As you know, UTA and UDOT, both of those departments take a while to tie anything down. So we've been in discussions with them. There's nothing solidified yet, but when you look at all the transportation plans out there, Pioneer Crossing does support good arguments for having a mass transit system going along there. And so over in our commercial section, we've kind of got 2 spots laid out where you could have, either a BART or something, buses come in and be able to load and unload for people on their way to work and back. So I don't know when we're going to have, a letter stating something to that fact, but we have been communicating with them.
So how do we move forward if there's no letter?
That one is a challenging topic for us at the staff level because we have been having conversations with UTA about transit. Right now, we have one bus route that comes into the city and then goes to Eagle Mountain, and it has a few stops in the city. I believe it's only 2 or 3 stops in the city, and it goes to the Lehigh Frontrunner station. It runs, I believe, 4 times in the morning and then 4 times in the mid-afternoon, evening. And we are coordinating with UDOT on getting a future, park and ride. And then that would extend that route a little bit further. As far as transit on Pioneer Crossing, we do, on our regional plan, we don't have transit on Pioneer Crossing in the regional plan. It's on Pony Express, not on Pioneer Crossing. So we do need more coordination with UTA. Additional bus routes cost $1 to $2 million a year to fund for UTA, and we have to meet certain criteria to even be eligible. And then within that eligibility, we have to get in line. So we, until we have further confirmation at a staff level, we don't recommend this.
Okay, that's what I was thinking. So is that part of the legislative as well, or is that administrative?
That would also be part of a legislative decision.
Okay. But in order to make that decision, according to the code, there has to be a public stop or some kind of transit.
Right. In order to increase the density, that would be the criteria that they're proposing to justify the density increase. Okay. And right now, at this point in time, it's difficult because there's not enough information provided to us on a, from the staff review to be able to recommend approval of that request.
Okay. Thank you for that. Just wondering why, okay, so I guess I understand the why for the senior apartment heights increase. Because of you want to put the condensers or the equipment on top. Yeah,
we were trying to get 50 feet so we could get the parapets to get the condensers on top at first. But we've decided that 45 feet is the max that the city is able to do, and so we're going to keep it at 45 feet. But we need the flat roof so we can put the condensers and all the units and everything up on top to make it so it's an attractive building.
Okay, so the height then will be 45 feet. So
yes,
we don't need to make an exception on that one then, or
no,
consider. Okay, yeah, because there were two sections. One actually says 50 feet, and the other section says 45 feet. So I wasn't sure.
We just missed one of the.
Okay, all right. So it's going to be 45 then.
Yeah.
All right, terrific.
And the MDA specifies that as well.
Okay, and then why the reduction request for setbacks on the senior housing?
Well, we're doing footprint lots on all of them, so Kent might be able to answer that better for me. So,
well, it's because of the layout. Let me pull that up so I can reference you the page number. Do you have the page number available in their packet, or I can pull that up?
I have the staff report, but I don't have all the drawings for it. Are they,
It's because of
It's
the
in the
layout,
neighborhood
and they're
plan.
proposing rear-loaded units, so then the depth would be in the back rather in the front. It's just a request that they're making. So it's really up to your discretion, which way you want to recommend that.
So if if we say stick to the code, then what happens to your plans?
Well, we are footprint lots, so I don't believe there are setback requirements with footprint lots.
There are.
There are.
Yeah, so again, what would happen then?
It'd probably change up quite a bit of the open space for me, I guess. Mark, do you have any?
Well, yeah, it would change the open space that's available. But the other thing I do is.
Could you please come up to the microphone so that you can be on the recording for the record?
You're right. Thank you. And if you don't mind stating your name as well. I'll do in front of it.
No, I'm good. I'm good. I'm not going to be here for Mark Johnson. I'm with Mustang Design. We do the design for them. So if you go to setback on individual lots, one of two things are going to happen. Either you're going to reduce the overall green space that the community is going to manage and maintain, which these guys generally like to have the community maintain all the open space because it makes it a lot more consistent. And you don't get spaces that are not maintained. You understand that, and I'm sure you do, because they like to maintain it all right up to the building fronts. The other thing that would probably happen is the size of the units would have to be reduced. And I'm not sure if they want to do that. These are larger townhouses than what you normally see. These were actually modeled after, in size, after the ones that are in Ivory Ridge over in Lehigh, and those are very large townhouses. I don't know if you're familiar with those, but if we do have to pull those back, the units just get smaller.
Okay, so I guess the issue I have is that's an issue then, because I don't know what the justification would be for a change, other than we just want bigger lots, and then I don't have a problem. I mean, green space, you have to just meet the code. So, you could reduce the green space as long as it meets code, but I mean,
Yeah.
how should I think about this then?
yeah, if I could add, the application advocates for reduced parking and for that very reason, so they have more space for parks and trails and open space.
Okay, so that's still a problem because our city has a parking issue, and so I don't know if that's necessarily a good solution in order to have just larger spaces.
It's a judgment call, yes.
Yeah. Okay, so, all right, let's keep talking, because maybe other commissioners will have insight that would help me figure out, how to think on this. It says that the Army, a jurisdictional determination is required by the Army Corps. What would happen if the Army Corps determines against development? And then what?
This is what that's for. It's for the wetlands. So we do have a little bit of wetlands on the property that we are mitigating and getting rid of right now. They've already come out and done a delineation. They've shrunken the area up, and they've got no problems as long as it keeps on getting smaller. So currently, there's a couple sections that do have some wetlands that are being delineated and mitigated right now. So they're not looking to stop anything. You have to go through the process.
Okay, so you're expecting them the Army Corps to approve?
Yes, well, they've already approved a lot of it. It's just there's a couple wetland pieces that they still have to take away when they dry up, or mitigate, and that's just the process we got to go through.
Okay, but again, you're still expecting the Army Corps of Engineers to approve. There's not an issue expected that they won't approve.
And they've already approved 90% of the property. So
Okay, well, I'm thinking of the 10% that isn't approved yet.
yeah.
There is a large longitudinal park that goes through this. That would be part of the mitigation. There are mitigation procedures required.
Okay, all right, thank you. And then, let me get to the right page here. Okay, so with the evergreen issue, it says, I mean, there's a, I think in the neighborhood plan itself, there was a statement that said that the reason why evergreens aren't recommended in this area was because the water, the city's irrigation water is too, the salinity is wrong. And then there's another section that says that it's the soil that's wrong. So the neighborhood plan says it's the water, the irrigation water, and then the other one says it's soil. So which is it, first of all?
Both. So in this area, it's got an alluvial fan that does have soil conditions that aren't conducive towards evergreens. And then also the irrigation water in the city is a little more, it has a little bit more, acidic in it. And so the evergreens don't grow as well in there. We've put in a bunch of evergreens, seen a bunch of them die in another project. And so that's one of the things that we are asking for city council to approve is, we're not going to get rid of trees or have less trees. It's just we're not going to have near as many evergreens just because they do not do good in the soil. And with the water, it does affect them as well.
No, so yeah, I understand that you will plant more, equivalent number of trees or more, so that's great. But if the city's irrigation water itself is wrong for evergreens, then why don't we have that issue throughout the entire city? Because we use the same irrigation water, or is it like a different irrigation water in that section, in that part of the city?
It's a combination of both the water and the soils that do it to it. So, your guys' irrigation water comes from Utah Lake, and when Utah Lake gets low, it gets more acidic, and that causes things to not grow as well. And so evergreens, when they're brand new, they are more susceptible to dying from higher acidity in the water and more alkaline.
But that would be true for the entire city, right? So then we should be seeing the same problems with the evergreens in the entire city? Or is it just because of the alluvial fan soils?
The alluvial fan is the biggest part of it, and that is a small section that runs up next to the Jordan River, and it does affect our property.
I believe there was a soils analysis map that was included in the packet, wasn't it?
Yeah.
So that should have been in your packet. If you look.
Right, so again, have we heard of this before? Or are there other properties in the alluvial fan that, where the developers are asking for no evergreens? Or is this, how come I've heard this for the first time in the 8 years I've been here?
There are evergreens, even in our city parks, do struggle depending on the year and the season and the type. And in talking with our Parks Department, there, even this past year, so last year we had a drought and certain evergreens flourished, and this year we had a lot of water and those, and then different evergreens flourished. We do have high salinity water in our high salinity content in our irrigation water, and that does cause certain evergreens to struggle. There's not all evergreens will do well here. They're proposing that their soil has higher salinity than other parts of the city, and that in addition to the irrigation water, it's putting it over a certain threshold that would make those particular trees struggle. Again, that's a legislative decision. It's something they're asking for. If they do put them in and they don't do well, they'll have to replace them. That's how it would work in other places, in other developments. If they've put them in and they've struggled, they do have to replace them. It is a common problem in the city that evergreens struggle.
So if that's the case, then maybe we should look at the code then and, acknowledge that so that it doesn't have to be an exception. And it also gives other developers in similar situations not have to deal with that as well and the cost of replacing those trees.
Right, and they are proposing that their area, because it's the alluvial fan, does have higher salinity than other areas. It is a difficult topic. It might be the first time you're hearing it, but it isn't the first time staff is hearing it. We require way less evergreen trees than deciduous trees in the code. So, you might have to do 20, just if you had to do 20, you might have to do 4 or 5 deciduous, or
right.
Even way less than that. But the ratio, so we don't have a high requirement. We do require them, though, and we do get mixed feedback on it.
Okay. Yeah, so I guess I don't have an issue with the applicant's request for this particular issue, but I do think that then the city should at least consider in similar soil types. And if our water is that way throughout the entire city, then maybe we don't put that kind of burden on developers in similar situations and similar soil types then. Otherwise, it'll always be an exception, and I just feel like, do we have to do an exception for these types of soil types?
We do get our secondary water from different sources. Some of it comes from deep wells that, aren't at a drinking level quality. Some of it comes from Utah Lake, and some of it comes from the river and canals. So we do get them from different sources, and I would have to ask more questions to Public Works to find out if those different sources have different salinity
okay.
content. I don't know the answer.
So it's not all, okay, so even the water is different. So it's hard to say then that, in all alluvial fan soil types that this is going to be a problem. So maybe it does have to be handled as an exception then.
It's true, exactly. So this is an alluvial fan area, and then at the bottom of our drainage channels, we have that as well. So we have different alluvial fans in different locations, but they are watered with different sources.
Okay.
And they might not have the same soil issues in each alluvial fan.
I see. Okay. Well, thank you for the explanation. We have a can comply for a buildable lot on Promenade Way. Let's see what that says here. Sorry, I have to get to it. Okay. It says there was a note. Please verify that the lot on the corner of 520 North and Promenade Way is buildable with mixed residential standards. Is that something that you will be able to verify?
All of our lots are buildable, so I'm not sure which one that is specific, but we have, put footprints on all of them and made sure that everything can support a house with a 2-car garage.
Okay. Yeah, it was highlighted as can comply. All right. And then any anticipated issues regarding remnants of property that don't conform to approved purposes? That was also another issue. What was that one? Yeah, it says, wait, let me make sure I'm on the right page here. Yep. It was a can comply as well. So I'm just asking, is there any anticipated issues, because it said can comply, regarding remnants of property that don't conform to approved purposes?
I'm not aware of any from my review.
Okay. Because again, it was highlighted in the staff packet.
I do have the setback diagram up if you would like to go back to that.
I'm just going through the highlighted can comply, so
I want
it
to,
was okay.
sure, go ahead.
Yeah.
We'll come back to that when you're done with your list.
Okay.
Don't wanna-
And then there's also a can comply for double access lots are not permitted with the exception of corner lots. And it says 2 lots on 770 will need to be restricted to 1 access. So is that an issue?
Which ones?
We have that, one of the slides that could show the lots.
Okay.
And it should be in your packet as well.
Which,
Okay.
I can go to it. I have the whole packet up now,
Yeah,
so
it's on the main presentation too.
whichever slides we need to go to. Which, is there
There's
one that has lot numbers?
So the one of them says 2 lots.
There's not
2
lot-
lots on 770. It's on page 22 in the packet. So I'm guessing this part's administrative, right?
Yes.
Okay. That's why I'm picking.
Oh, okay. Right, so we're just clarifying that those two, this is more for the applicant, that they need to incorporate that into their preliminary plat when we get to that stage of the process, is that, so we like to let them know up front that those 2 lots will only be able to have 1 access.
Okay, so it's just a heads up. It's not necessarily a problem.
Correct.
Right, it's not, exactly.
Okay. That's good. And then we have do not complies for flat roof on senior apartment tower.
And that if you were to grant the variation or the modification that's being proposed, then they would comply. So it's really that legislative decision. If it's made to allow that, then they would comply. At this point in time, they don't comply because that decision hasn't been made yet.
So, and, okay, then what does the city think about having these flat roofs then? Why isn't it allowed?
So one of the reasons it's not allowed is for character in a residential area. It's been a preference by the city council. Staff is not going to express an opinion on that particular topic. We really experience that everybody making decisions has different opinions, and so it's really something that needs to be decided by the legislative body.
And that's
By the city council, right. And so you can make a recommendation whether you support that or not. Again, I believe everybody will probably have a preference, whether that's pitched or flat roofs or things like that. In this particular case, their drawings do have an example of a flat roof that's not just a single line. It's got variation, and it's got horizontal and vertical variations in that roof line. It's all perception on whether that's acceptable or attractive or not, and so that's really up to you to make a recommendation and the city council to make that decision.
So is it mostly aesthetic?
It's aesthetic, right?
Oh, okay.
Right. That's the reason it's in the code that residential units have a pitched roof for aesthetic and character, and it's just a preference what type of character is preferred in the city.
Oh, okay. All right. Well, I personally, I have a modern house. In fact, we had to get exceptions because our pitch is almost flat as well. And so I have no issues with the aesthetics of that, especially since it's a tower, So, I mean, it's not like a single family home. Okay. So thank you for that explanation then. And then, there's so many in here. Applicant's reduction in parking request depends on a UTA bus stop. How do residents get to Promenade Way and the bus stop, especially when there's a 6-foot privacy fence separating the development from Promenade Way?
Let's see.
These are some comments we haven't heard before, so can you bring up a map, Ken?
Yeah.
I don't know if I may. So I guess the idea is that we can grant, the code says we can grant an exception for the density if it's close to like a traffic stop or transit stop. But your development has a 6-foot privacy fence between the lot, the property, and the Promenade Way where the bus stop is proposed. So it doesn't seem like that's actually really correlated, where that bus stop should allow for a density, because it's actually a separate property separated by a privacy fence that's 6 foot tall. And I don't really see how that's necessarily a bus stop that, that it follows the intent of what the code exception or the exception in the code would be, at least, or am I wrong? So I'm just asking you to change my mind.
So all of this property here is ours, the heavy commercial and everything, and just for layout purposes, it was better to put the future bus station or bus stop on Promenade Way, because that way they can have an easy pull in off of Pioneer Crossing, and they're able to pull out. Where if you do put it right over in the residential section, then it creates more of almost a hazard, because you're gonna have kids running around and you don't want to have a bus stop right where the kids are playing and everything. So by putting it in our heavy commercial area, it just makes it so it's a safer location and easier route for UTA to operate and manage. So it's just, this whole thing is part of the whole master development agreement that we're doing. So the neighborhood plan is just the residential portion of it.
If I could add to that, I'm not sure the question on the fence, so I need clarification, because everybody would access the bus stop along the public right-of-way, because there'll be sidewalks there.
Right, but the density reduction or the density increase that you're asking for is for the parking lot for the senior housing, right? So,
It's actually for the whole project. So the senior housing will probably have a 6-foot fence around it. There will be gates. There will be access through that. and I'm sure there'll be an access onto the public street onto Presidio Way to access that stop. To clarify on the stop, the reason we looked at that, I have had some conversations with some people at UTA about it, is it's not only serving this development. We look at everything you have south and east of here in the your Lakeshore development. And obviously, when you look at the density there and the type of housing there, there's probably going to be a need in the future for some kind of transit. It's just, your density is too high, right? You're probably going to want that. And so it made sense, particularly on the right side of the road, that on the go-to side, which is the way going in towards I-15 in the morning, they would turn off here on Promenade Way, hit the bus stop, go down to Lazarette, and then around to probably another stop, to pick up the people that are in the Lakeshore development, and then get back on Pioneer Crossing on 23 West. I don't know if that makes sense, but it makes sense.
Yeah, no, what you're saying makes sense. It's just that, does that grant you a reduction, a change in the density?
Well, that's the problem, is we can't really tell in the future what's going to happen. We can only assume certain things will happen. I'd say, based on density and based on the desire to have transit out here, and I know that the desire is high because I've talked to a lot of people out here, I think it's a pretty safe assumption that there will be transit in this area at some point in the future.
Okay. All right, thank you. Okay, so let's get to this. It's a text. This is on the general description, in the neighborhood plan on the general description. Paragraph 2 states that the mixed residential zone allows density of 12 dwelling units per acre as a matter of fact. And shouldn't it say can allow as opposed to, it's on your neighborhood plan.
That's a good catch. It would be the base density in this zone is 8 units per acre, and then
Right.
there's 3 criteria in there where you can get increases, and if you were to get all 3, then you could have up to 12. They're proposing one of those and requesting the 8.25 overall, and in proposing the bus stop. There are 2 other criteria in there that they're not proposing. If they did, then it could go up to 12.
Okay, yeah, because it says here in the general description, the MR zone allows for a blended density of up to 12 dwelling units per acre, which it doesn't, right? Unless it meets certain criteria.
Right.
It's actually 8. So,
Right.
yeah, that's why I think it should say the MR zone can allow for a blended, just so
Right.
that there is
What
there's an
page
issue
is
there.
that?
In the neighborhood plan, it's the general description. It's page 7.
Okay, thank
Yeah.
you. Oh, and we can have that, I'm sure the applicant could change that.
Yeah.
We can make edits to it.
All right,
And
thank
also, the traffic, if we do get a parking or a bus stop right there, that does, allow for 2 extra units per acre. And we're not looking for 2 extra units per acre. We're just, I believe it's rounded up to 8.25.
Right.
So we're not overly above it. It's just with how the layout and everything work, that's what will be. And, it depending on a few wetlands things, it might be less, but it's not going to be, more than that. So, if we lost, 2 or 3 lots due to wetlands, it could drop down to, 8.1 or something, or 8.15. But, we're not asking for an extreme amount above what could be asked for. We're just asking that we can get our project with what it is, because we do believe there will be a future transit there, and that's what that exception does require.
Understood? Yeah, it's just that the code says that anything above 8. So it doesn't say, if it's a small amount above 8, it's okay. It doesn't say that, so that's,
And I think we have a maximum limited number of units on here is what we were proposed, and we can, if I recall.
I don't know if you have that in the neighborhood plan.
Yeah.
717?
Yeah, 717.
Yeah. So we're limiting it, so it will not be 8.25.
okay. Oh, okay. Well, then we won't have an issue.
I'm
Well,
sorry.
It's still above, it's still above 8.
Still above 8, but it's not as high as 8.
Oh, you say it won't be 8.25, but it'll still be above 8.
Right.
Okay, well, still same issue. Okay, and then Just asking, how is it that we have heavy commercial next to town? Is that an oversight in our general plan or
This was,
without any blending?
yeah, this was rezoned with the idea that we'd come back with a master development agreement. And part of that master development is this neighborhood plan. So it's contingent upon this whole plan if the city wants to do that.
Oh, okay.
It does talk about having appropriate buffers, between the residential and the commercial.
Right. Or no, we didn't call it blending, we called it feathering, or what, I can't remember what it was, that discussion that we had a long time ago. But we don't have any feathering here, right? It's just right across the street.
Right.
Does that get looked at some point, like during preliminary plat or something, or?
The buffer,
Yeah,
yeah, that'll probably be addressed in the master development agreement, because I think that's actually in the code to have that buffer between residential and commercial.
right. Okay, well, that wasn't an issue, I just wondered how we got to that point. And then,
These are also the zones that the city council asked us to do when we started everything a couple years ago.
yeah, no, I'm not blaming you at all. I mean, because if that zoning is that way, I'm just wondering why it is that way. I don't
And
know
right
why the
next-
city council was okay.
Right to the west or the east of us, there is, well, it's Office Warehouse right next to us, but, you guys changed from Office Warehouse to heavy commercial, so it's just Office Warehouse with smaller buildings, basically.
Yeah,
There is a condition in the approval that there be a buffering, whether that's landscaping or fencing or things like that. The code does require 10 feet, a 10-foot landscape buffer. And that, so again, we are looking, in addition to this, you will be seeing the master development agreement is that for all of it?
Yes.
And so the details of that are still being worked on. We wanted to go ahead and bring this to you and bring these topics to you so that you're aware of them. And then you will be seeing the master development agreement as well.
The proposed buffer will be on the commercial property, not technically in the mixed residential.
okay.
So it's not technically part of the neighborhood plan.
So, right, so
I see.
the conditions of the proposed buffer, you will be seeing those in the master development agreement. The applicant is proposing that it meet code, which requires 10 feet.
Okay, all right, so it sounds like they'll handle it then. And then in the elevations, on some of the pages of the elevations in the neighborhood plan there's like a little statement underneath one of the or under all the elevations. It says large townhome, front load, front elevation, asterisk. And all these notes have asterisks, but I don't see an asterisk anywhere, so I was wondering what the asterisk was about. Is it an exception or?
It is, and that's a good point. The asterisk is meant to refer to the language at the bottom that states that these are examples.
Oh,
and
okay.
not the exact
So-
elevation.
It's just missing an asterisk on the bottom.
So the asterisk
Statement, okay.
should be for this note at the bottom here.
Okay.
We can correct that.
It's not that big a deal. I'm just wondering what the asterisk is about. Is there some kind of exception somewhere? Okay, and then on page 27, it says materials, on the materials first section, second bullet, flat membrane roof to be used, which differs from city code. So is it the flat roof that's the issue, or is it the membrane material that's the problem? That's the
That's the flat roof, because this is for the senior apartment design.
okay. So when you say it's a flat roof and the membrane material,
Yeah, instead of a pitched roof with shingles.
okay, so it's not the membrane material that's the issue, it's the flat roof.
Yes.
Yeah, okay. So we don't have a problem with the membrane material.
No problem with that.
Okay. And then also in the parking, I was just wondering about parking. So what about guest parking? Are there, and you said that the drive, or this is in the senior.
Correct,
part.
this is in the senior.
Yeah, you said the driveways have enough for parking, but just wondering, like, for guest parking, like younger family, younger family members living with grandparents. So you said that usually with the number of parking is reduced usually for senior housing, but there are a lot of changes in family and family makeup. And a lot of younger people are now living with their grandparents, so they have cars as well, so maybe the senior folks don't have as many cars, but the people who are living with them do. And so I was wondering, did that factor in the number that you were
This
looking
is
at?
senior restricted housing, so we're not going to have young families living with them.
So so you can't have okay, all right. And then what about, you mentioned, in the plan that this is supposed to be for like senior or active lifestyle, to promote that. So what about other vehicles for active lifestyles, like boats, ATVs, watercraft, RVs, campers?
Those will not be allowed there.
Oh, is that right? Okay.
Yeah, in the senior community, they've got things there where you can, park some stuff in your garages and things like that. But for the senior apartment, we are not anticipating any RVs and, boats and things like that. It's just more of, when you say active senior citizen or active, 55 plus, it's, those who are senior citizens that are able to function on their own and not have to worry about, doctors coming in every day to take care of them and things like that. It's, the everyday person.
Okay, so you're just not going to allow those kinds of vehicles there, so it won't be an issue for parking for
they're
ATVs and things like that? Okay. Okay, all right. And then, I guess, I had a question about why do these apartments need flat roofs for air conditioning equipment when others in the city don't? But I guess it's mostly just, again, aesthetics. You didn't want the condensers on the ground.
Correct. If they're all on the ground, then it just makes for an eyesore.
Okay, so it's not a functional issue or engineering
It's
issue?
not a functional, it's a design and attractiveness, so.
Noise and aesthetics.
Okay, all right. And then many of the park amenities seem oriented to children in expectation of those visitors. Where will they park?
So the senior apartments, the seniors only, the townhouses, those are all going to be for, young families and everybody. So that's why we have all the parks there for all those families. So it's for the residents that live there. They are private parks. So it's basically all the residents have their own park, either in their backyard or front yard or however their building is. And
Okay,
so, in each one of those townhouses, they do have 2-car garages, and they have the longer driveways to be able to handle 2 cars in their driveways.
okay,
And again, we are following city standards for streets, so, your city standard does allow for on-street parking if you had to, but we are not anticipating on-street parking.
okay.
We also have some additional parking. I don't know if you can pull up the parking map. I don't know which
I
one of you
can.
have the mouse there, but the city allows for some diagonal parking off the public streets. In fact, you can see them in that last one you just had up. Yeah, if you go back. Yeah, you'll see in the corners of a lot of the public streets next to the townhomes, see some parking, some diagonal parking areas. Sarah, you may have to just kind of point to them with your, right there. And we put those frequently throughout the whole area, so we also have those in addition. So primarily, I think the thought is those would be for guest parking, visitor parking, if they don't park in the driveways, because I say there's 2-car garages in the townhomes plus 2 in the driveway.
Okay.
So we actually feel there's ample parking here.
And that's on every single home in this except for the apartment.
Okay. And I'm glad you had that, because the senior apartment parking, you said there aren't any garages there, it's all going to be stall parking, right?
There are garages, if you look at the kind of the northwest of them, those are garages there.
Oh, okay,
So there are some seniors who like to have garages,
right,
but they'll be restricted to vehicles. They'll have to park vehicles and rent them out to use it as a shop or something like that.
okay. And then the city code, so for the stall parking, it looks like it's double row, and city code requires that we have landscaped,
Islands?
They're there.
They're there.
yeah, islands, okay, so
Yeah,
is that
you
what the little
Kind of
white,
see them there, but
the
they're,
little white things are? Okay, all right, okay, thank you for that. Almost done.
some of those will be covered too, I believe, right?
Yeah.
The stalls?
Yeah.
Okay. That's it.
When it comes to park, I've worked with these guys for a long time, and the one thing they don't want is to have parking problems. they like to make sure that there's enough
Right.
for everybody, because it works better for them. I mean, you know, their other apartment in Pleasant Grove, and your mayor and your council visited them a couple of years ago when we started this project. Quite surprised, in fact, the mayor went back twice to look at them, because parking can kill you, and you'll lose renters if there's not enough places.
Exactly, yeah, and we've had some issues in our city about that, you know. So, okay, thank you for your exhaustive attention, and,
Can we talk about the setbacks real quick, because she's pulled that up right here.
yeah,
So the only setbacks we're aware of are the ones that are shown here, and that's the setback. There are setbacks in front of the home, in front of the townhomes, just not inside the lots. And so I was concerned when I heard this term setback, because to me, that means that's a setback inside of a lot, between the lot line of the building. And what we're asking is that these are zero lot lines, meaning is you typically have that in a townhome, because the zero lot line is the, you know, the firewall between the two units. And we just wouldn't have setbacks there, unless I'm missing something.
okay.
Tara.
Well, the 10.5-foot setback for the rear load is shown here. So you're showing a rear load product and you're showing 10.5, but you're showing the driveway beyond the into the alley. So that even though it's a 10.5-foot setback, it looks like you're still showing a 20-foot driveway.
That is correct.
And then what was the other setback? The front? On the,
The front load, it's in the same picture.
oh, okay.
The other one is the front load, excuse me. You have a 10-foot PUE, but you also have the 20-foot setback, which is also the length of your driveways there, minimum length.
And which one did you want to be 15 feet rather than 20 feet? Is it the quad building, is it this one?
No, those are underground parking, those 3 units right there.
I think, is it this one right here, the 15-foot setback? So
yeah.
they stagger some of these.
It's not for those, it's probably for the other units.
Okay.
I don't know if you have them.
Well,
Keep scrolling up.
Right there we go.
Right there.
yeah, so these are, there's 4 units in each building, but the front, the front is in different, basically it's a 4-sided front. So, and then they're proposing, where is it, the reduced
So the
setback?
driveways are in the center. It's a pinwheel design. So the entries to each unit are kind of in the corners, or close to the corners. The parking is in the center. You can see where there's a little kind of a notch, if you will. And in the lower one, you can see a dimension there of 24 foot 4 inches. So those are the parking in front of the garage. And then each one of those units has 2 additional parking inside the unit. These are actually pretty large units.
And these units are the ones that are just south of Patriot Park. So I don't know if you guys have seen that community there.
Yeah.
But these are the same type of buildings that are there, and I believe the setbacks are the same there too.
And the diagram that shows, so there's another diagram in here that shows it. Let me get to it.
And these are senior restricted as well.
Oh, okay.
There's one that shows the front facade, or it's got the blue lines. Let me go back to that. Apologize for scrolling like this. We're almost there. Oh, green lines. And so this is the area. You can see that some of them are closer to the street than others. And is that where it's 15 feet rather than 20?
That's probably true, because we stagger those units when we can, because aesthetically. Now, and keep in mind, the units aren't all identical. There's 4 or 5 different units to choose from. How many are you going to have?
There's 4
here?
different floor plans, and each of them have an option to have a bonus room, but you only do 2 bonus rooms per building at max, so.
So all those on the right side, they're all senior restricted, but they all have 4 parking spaces per unit.
I guess in general, just as we have more comments and questions, I have no issues with the flat roof because that's aesthetics, and I like those anyway. And I have no problems with the setbacks, actually, because I think you've explained the reasons why. I guess my only real issue is the density change. just because I don't know how to justify that when we don't have a UTA document. And so, because it's, we cross our fingers, we need it. I totally agree with everything you said, but I don't know how to make that exception without saying, okay, well, let's just not even worry about it because we'll make these exceptions whenever someone says that we need more bus stops. So that's the only one I'm struggling with, and I'm hoping that I could get some more clarity as we continue. Thank you.
And so the setback request says 20 feet, or instead of 20 feet, 15 feet to the senior attached and senior condos, so then these locations as well. And then the 10 and a half would be for the townhomes that are on an alley, but they do still have a 20-foot driveway.
So all our units are within the setback then.
Okay, yeah, that's why I have no real issue with that, with your request on that particular issue. Thank you.
And the density is also a difficult one because we don't have guarantee that we will have a bus route here.
Right, and that's my issue. That I don't have a problem with all the other requests, the legislative requests, but with this one, that's the one I'm struggling with right now. Thank you.
All right, awesome. Thank you, Commissioner Kilgore. Appreciate the thorough analysis. I'm going to be very impressed if other commissioners have additional questions, given the analysis you went through. That was awesome. Thank you very much. Commissioner Hill.
Thank you, Chair. And Ken, thank you. You're very thorough always. And you've brought up the questions that staff has shown that we're not in compliance. And that's what we need to be doing. As I go down my notes, density, I don't have too much of a problem with that. Ken did a little bit. I'll pass parking because I'll come back to that, but flat roof, no problem. The evergreen trees, it's your experience, but do we have a licensed arborist that comes in and takes a look at that? Because we've got all kinds of different land throughout the city, and so we've set upon an approach that we want some evergreens. So my thought would be, if we do a variance for evergreen trees, do we have an arborist that's come in and given us an educated, factual report showing us that we're going to have problems with evergreen trees? Setbacks, I don't have a problem with. Building height, I don't have a problem with. The only thing that I had was parking. And, we talk about, you have a garage, and you've done a great job of having a driveway which would allow, 3 and 4, car 3 and 4 to park in. But you don't have any control whether they use the garage or not. That can be the workshop for, elderly, and I fall into that group. And it's in 2022, when we changed the parking structure, it's because we saw throughout the city that we were having problems with parking. And so I have a little bit of a problem with that, because you have no control what a garage is going to be. It can't be a part of an HOA that you can't not park your car, that you have to park your car in the garage.
That can be put in the CCNRs to restrict, basically say that you have to park your vehicles in the garage. And I believe our CCNRs, for the most part, do say that you have to be in the garage.
A lot do, but again, our experiences showed that we had to change the code to allow for parking. And so personally, I still have a little bit of a problem to this. We have 10 conditions that need to be resolved before you can move forward. And so many of those are judicial that need to go to the city council to make this happen. And so from my perspective, I know the city council is all about making sure that we follow code. I mean, we're not judicial, we're administrative, and we need to make sure that we follow code. But I feel very comfortable that the conditions that have been outlined are conditions that need to be rectified for you to go forward. Now, some of those will happen as this goes on. If it goes on to city council, they may make some judicial and changes to code and exemptions for you. So here's where I'm at right now. I want to be on the record that I still have a bit of a concern with parking. I feel comfortable enough that we have done our due diligence at the city planning or at the planning commission to address those conditions that don't fit within the code. Now, what I'd like to see personally is it to go to city council and have them do the judicial part that then lets you really know where you need to go and what you need to do. So those are my thoughts from that perspective. Again, I looked very thoroughly at your plan, the schematics. It looks like a great neighborhood plan, one that's going to enhance that area, fit within the criteria that other neighborhoods are. And, you know, we see our neighborhoods enhancing because of some of our code work. And you guys fall right into that. And you've been in this process long enough that you started when it was here and you're here, you know, but we're not to that finished product where we have grandfathering that allows you to do that. That's why you're coming before us and doing. So thank you, Keith, for what you've done. You know, your vision and your passion for what you're trying to accomplish. You could feel that in the presentation and the information that's been brought before us today. Again, the conditions are the ones that we're concerned about, and they are in condition. They've got to be met unless city council will do a judicial change that allow you to step outside of that. So those are my thoughts. Chair, that's all that I had.
Thank you, Commissioner Hill. Commissioner Mangum.
Thank you. So the one question I have is regarding the 8.25. The question I have is, if the code says 8 as a panel, do we need to stick to that 8 if they don't make one of the 3 exceptions, or is it a situation where if we make an exception when one of those 3 aren't met, that we set a precedence where all the other developers look to and say, well, you let them when they didn't meet it? So does that create an issue for us if we allow the over the 8 without one of those conditions? That's my question. That's all.
Did you want me to reply? There are criteria in there to get the increase. So there's 3 different things they can propose to ask for additional density. And the way the code is written would mean that you would want to make a finding that they've met that criteria.
So they have to meet that transportation. Okay. So if we allow it, then that means that they have to have that bus stop, essentially.
Right. And then the question is building a bus stop when we don't have guarantee of a route, is that adequate? So I think that's the question. Do we build a bus stop kind of like, you know, Field of Dreams? If we build it, they will come, or we hope they will come, or do we say we don't have enough guarantee to justify this? So it's really a tough question at this point in time. Of course, we want transit. Even today, the city planners had a field trip with with UTA. We took a transit field trip today. So we are in conversations with UTA about transit. We would love to see more transit in the area. And right now, it will be about, we have a park and ride proposed, and that's looking at about 2025, and then they'll need to extend the current bus route. And that's as far as our discussions are as of today, that we have a park and ride in the works, and when that's established, that the current bus route will be extended. They are discussing adding an additional route, but to this day, we have not heard from UTA that we're looking at a route here. So from a staff level, we have a condition in there that the applicant provide adequate information that UTA is considering this. It does help when you have a stop, but I mean, a bus stop, the current one we have is, a sign on the side of the road. So we don't even say in here what we're expecting in regard to a bus stop. It just says there will be a bus stop. but it doesn't say, you know, it will have a bench and a shelter and the road will be widened so the bus can pull out. It doesn't say any of those criteria or details or anything like that. At this point in time, the discussion is what they've provided adequate enough to justify the proposed increase?
Thank you. I'm in favor of the 8.25. I just don't want to set a bad precedent where other developers, well, they built a bus stop and it never came. We'll build a bus stop also. And then, you know, thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. We'll go to, did you have a comment?
Yeah, I was just out of curiosity, sir, do you have the exact verbiage on that condition pulled up by any chance?
Sure.
I remember it was kind of ambiguous too on what that language was.
So what staff is proposing for this condition is that the letter shall indicate UTA will be providing a bus route that will utilize this stop within the next 2 to 3 years. If no such letter is provided, the density shall not be approved and remain at 8 units per acre. That's what staff's proposing. Again, you know, the planning commission can make any recommendation they choose, and then the decision is up to the
Sorry,
city
I
council.
mean the exemption. You have the verbiage of the exemption.
Oh, in the code?
Right in the code, yeah.
Oh, yeah, yes. Just a second.
I'm going to make you look it up.
No, it's in the presentation.
Right. Just a second. Oh, it's in here?
Yeah.
The exact verbiage of the code? It's in the staff report.
Density, go up a little bit.
Oh, you have it in here, okay.
Yeah. The
Okay.
increase of up to.
So right here.
That's the exact wording.
Oh, whoops. An increase of up to 2 units if the property is adjacent to a future or existing transit stop or corridor and opportunities are provided in the neighborhood plan for commercial uses that support transit.
Okay, thanks.
I don't think there'd be any problem including what kind of facilities you want in the bus stop. I mean, if that's something, if you're worried about it having a bench, a shelter or something like that.
Or widening the street for it and everything.
That's what we were planning on doing anyway, but if you want to specify what you would like to see there, so it looks like a real bus stop and not just a spot in the road, I think that'd be fine.
Yeah, and, you know, the way I read this too, I mean, it is ambiguous on what it is asking for, because, you know, under my interpretations, we're next to a corridor and we're providing an opportunity in the neighborhood plan for the stop and commercial uses. So, you know, it's all up to interpretation on this variance.
Okay, good. All right, thank you, Commissioner. Go to Commissioner Mann.
Thank you. Thank you so much for your well-thought-out presentation, Claire, and we appreciate that. I just have a question and a comment in the frame of parking. You had mentioned that this community will be senior restricted. Oftentimes, we see senior communities that are developed which allow for a certain percentage of that population of homeowners to be under that age requirement or age demographic. Also, we see amended CC&Rs after the project has been developed, which will allow for further demographic of the younger age demographic to be homeowners within that community. Can you verify that this is going to be 100% senior housing and that there will not be any CCR amendments to allow for a younger demographic?
For the senior apartment, the 55-plus community, those are both deed restricted. Federal law states that you have to have a minimum or a maximum, a minimum of 80% that fall in that age group. 20% are allowed to be in there by law. We can't change that. But when we deed restrict it, we're basically allowed to age discriminate against the young people. So we do suggest that the younger people not move in.
I have a question about age restriction or senior restriction. Is that one of the individuals or occupants of the unit needs to be 55 or older?
Yes.
Or just all? Or?
One has to be 55 or older.
Yeah.
And, you know, we've seen it in the past where we've had some people that were younger moved in. They're usually out within a year. They kind of get ostracized when they move in. I mean,
Sure.
It's where discrimination is allowed, believe it or not.
But yeah, we do our best not to sell to anybody under. You know, there's a couple cases where you might have somebody that's 53 or 54 and they're widowed or something, and they say, "Hey, I don't have any kids. I just want to be here." And You know, so there is a provision for those that are a little bit younger, but, you know, anybody that has kids and stuff like that, unless they're disabled, they usually don't move in
But just to be clear, there is that 20% allowable
by law.
by law.
Yes,
right?
that's something we cannot change. Because we follow the federal
Discriminate
guideline.
against, right?
Yeah, we have to follow the federal guideline, but we are deed restricted.
Okay.
The federal guidelines also state that the HOA is responsible of doing periodic reviews of who is living in the homes and their age groups.
Right, okay. And then I guess just my other comment would pertain to the senior apartment housing. You had mentioned that they would probably not have family members or others living with them. That would not be allowed. However, and perhaps our attorney could chime in, as far as ADA requirements go, I believe that they would be required, if they are disabled, to be allowed to have a caregiver living with them. Is that correct? So my concern is just in the parking. When we have this 20% allowable at the younger age demographic of which they cannot discriminate against, and then we have potentially, our aging population with, potentially caregivers living with them, I don't know that 1 1/4 parking space per unit is going to be sufficient. That's just my concern.
Thank you, Commissioner Mann. Any other questions or comments? Okay, Commissioner Kilgore.
Yeah, I just wanted to, and my memory is just so bad about it, but I know the city, as the city grows, we need the transportation, the public transportation and all that, but we have fewer bus lines now than we did 10 years ago. And it's just, even though we need the bus lines and UTA, provided it for us, people just didn't use it. And so UTA actually reduced the number of bus lines in our city. And it's been a problem. And I'm not saying that will necessarily continue going 10 years into the future, but it just means that, at least with our history so far, it's not guaranteed. Even though the planners and people say we need it, but when we actually have it, a lot of people just don't use it. And so that's why, thinking that it's going to be good for us and we're going to need it because of the growth and everything. Again, I agree, but that's not necessarily what actually happens, because we actually lost a bus line for that reason, or for whatever reason. People just didn't use it. So again, I'm not disputing anything. I'm just saying that that's been our history. So that's why I'm stuck on that one request, because if we don't have a UTA document, then I don't see how by code we can actually go forward with that particular request. The other ones, there's debate, and I totally agree with the parking issue, because my eyebrows were raised when I said that senior residents don't necessarily need the same amount of parking as other, and you have the data, so I'm not going to dispute that, but I just wonder, because we have seniors in my community, and I know it's because you said it's restricted, but they all have RVs, they all have ATVs, they all have boats, and because they are active. And so somehow either they're going to store it in the garage, or I don't know. And that's why I just have that concern. But my biggest concern, though, is code. And that has to do with the density increase request. And because, I don't see how anyone can justify saying, okay, we'll just turn our eyes away from the three conditions that we need to have. Yeah. Why? What's the justification for that? Just because we like you? How do we do that going forward with other developers?
And
just, how do we just justify that? So
say it's up for interpretation, because we do feel we provide opportunities in the neighborhood plan, which is what the code states there. So it just has it depends on how you interpret the code on what's allowed and what's not allowed with that. So, our interpretation is that we do that. The city interprets it a little bit different.
Well, because you could build a bus stop, but if UTA doesn't approve a bus route, then there's no point in the bus stop. It's just decoration.
Yeah, but
to get around the code.
Yeah, and but we are providing the opportunities in the neighborhood plan. So that's what the code does state. And so we feel we are following that. But we are also working with UTA to try and get something in writing from them as well. And back to the parking, all our other senior community, the single level ones, those all do have 4 stalls. You've got 2 in the garage and 2 in the driveway. It's just a senior apartment that's less. And like you said, we do have the data to back up the 1.25 stalls per unit as being ample. We find that, that's almost what our density is 1 to 1.25 per home in density, because you have a lot of widows, single people moving to those areas. So most of them are just one person living in that apartment. And
They're 1 or 2 bedroom apartments.
so
They're not going to have a lot of people living in.
Okay, thank you.
All right, thank you, Commissioner Kilgore. Commissioner Wilden.
Oh, thank you. I think you resolved all my concerns. I'm looking forward to this project, except for one concern, and I just want to express that the same that Jack and Ken have expressed. I still have that concern about the density, the same that you have. So that has not been resolved in my mind. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Wilden. We'll go to Commissioner Spasti Burns.
Thank you. Okay, so I have a couple of questions. Between 520 North and 480 North, the partial access and these sensitive lands are together right there.
can we pull up a map?
Sarah, put that up. Thank you. Go ahead, Richard.
Yeah, can you just talk to me a little bit about that? Explain what's going on there, what that use you expect it to realistically look like.
So right in there between 520 and 480.
Yeah,
So that's going to be a linear park.
I'm sorry, a what?
A linear park. So that's probably going to be part of our wetland mitigation, where that will be open because there's going to be some water in there. So it's basically, yeah, it's going to have kind of an open canal and a.
We have a cross-section in the packet there somewhere.
Is that, and it is an open canal? Sorry, Dan.
Yes.
There's actually a structure there already. It's not very attractive. We plan on making it much more attractive than it is right now.
So there's an open canal, and then there'll be like a walkway, or?
I will have a walkway path along.
Sarah, can you do this cross-section? I believe that's in the packet somewhere. Sorry. It's a big packet, I know.
Yeah, it's huge. Sorry, I'm like also just over here scrolling.
It's where the street cross-sections are. It's probably at the end. Well, you might have went, yeah, right there. We don't show it right there, do we?
Oh, no, it's not shown
No,
there.
I thought we had it somewhere. But. So there's a 3-rail fence. I'll try to describe it. So the back of the homes will have a fence. And there'll be a pathway behind those, and then a 3-rail fence, and then the linear, water feature.
So that canal, y'all own that canal then?
I'm sorry, Bob.
Y'all own that canal? Like that canal is,
The canal will be part of the project.
but it's your property, it's not the,
Yeah, it's a drainage canal right now is what it is. It needs to be improved. It's shown up on the wetland maps because right now the water is just stagnant in it. And so we're doing some engineering there that'll help, with the water situation. All the land is being raised so that we do have drainage. And so the intent is to have a feature there that actually functions and mitigates the wetlands issue that's there now.
sorry, I know I asked this like 2 times. I had to be at work at 6 this morning. So the canal company doesn't own that land, you own that land?
We own that land, correct.
Okay.
It's a historical drainage canal that Lehigh Irrigation used to use.
Okay.
And I don't believe they're even draining to that or will not be draining that any further.
So when I look at this development, the open spaces really are just in between, like in those quads behind the like townhomes. And then that corridor.
Every pod essentially will have its own park.
Yeah. And then there's that corridor that goes through the middle that you're putting the trail in between 520 North and 480 North.
There's a good one right there.
Yeah. So there's not, not sure how to what the right verbiage on this is, but it doesn't feel like the open space is very accessible to the general public.
It is not.
Yeah,
These are private parks.
yeah. And,
But they are accessible to the single-family homes of the perimeter. Now, the senior apartments, the space behind them will probably be used exclusively for them.
yeah,
But all the other parks are used for anybody who's part of the development.
yeah.
Park will have different features in it.
So I'm really torn on this one. I really like a lot of things that are going in here. I really like these pocket parks behind the townhomes. I think it creates a really safe area for children to be children, right? And get into a little bit of trouble, slightly out of sight of their parents. I really like the senior condos. I really like a lot of this. I like the way your quad houses are. But I do have some serious concerns about those driveways, the 10.5-foot driveways. That is absolutely not going to work.
It's 10.5 to the setback.
But they are 20
And
feet.
then you have an additional 10 foot of setback. So every driveway is at least 20 foot long.
So even on those private road, it's part of the driveway is the private road. So if they wanted to access that,
It's not, actually, the private road doesn't start until yeah, there you go.
okay, can you show me where would the sidewalk be?
So on a alley, you don't have a sidewalk typically.
Yeah, okay,
It actually, all the water drains to the center. There's a center gutter down the center of the alley. Since these are rear loads, you don't anticipate that you'll have a lot of foot traffic needing a sidewalk. They'll literally walk down the alley. That's what typically happens in alleys. But the parking stalls or driveways are all at least 20 feet long.
Basically, the difference between this and what we see is that the PUEs are actually covering. The PUEs are actually in that 10 feet of driveway. So normally we see the PUEs in front of the driveway, but these are going right through those driveways.
y'all, I'm so sorry. It really has been a very long day. So there won't be sidewalks then in the back?
Just on the alleys.
Just on the alleys there won't be. So then when their guests come, they just have to walk in the street?
Most of the guests they'll either park in the driveway of the unit, or they'll park in those stalls north and south of the pods.
And then they'll go to the front door, which is inside the park area.
They have to walk through the park to go to the front door. That's typical of a rear load.
Okay. Yeah. Okay, so how far is the proposed bus stop from the homes or from the residential area?
Yep, right there.
It's going to be right there.
Do we have any idea about how many feet? Rough guess is totally fine.
There's 100,
For
to
me.
the apartments, I would suspect the apartments would be the biggest user of the bus stop. If the bus does come, you're probably 300 to 400 feet.
Okay. I just on a staff and city side, if we are looking at changing this code, maybe that might be something we want to look at including is if we are going to use or allow a bus stop that it is within a certain distance of that residential. That's obviously for a further day though. Okay, so that whole feathering thing, there's no requirement that it goes heavier residential and then lighter residential when it's that close to commercial?
We do have a section in the code about transitioning densities. However, we usually transition that from commercial to, density and then less density, so it can be interpreted in different ways. Usually we're transitioning multifamily to single family. So you do have some single family here, and then you have some townhomes and some condos. So really, the way it's written is that you're putting townhomes between commercial and single family.
But that doesn't happen with this plan.
It is happening, well, not right here, no.
Okay. So is that something that we'll need to, like, address?
On the commercial property.
Okay, but we're not talking about the buffer, though. We're talking about that it has to go townhome and then single family. When it's like commercial, then townhome, then single family home. And in that section, it doesn't. Right?
Right, and you can recommend against that if you choose.
But the way the code is written right now, do we need to address that?
I would need to look, sorry, I have
That's
to
okay.
pull up that exact code and look
A
at
long
it.
day for you, too.
So let me do that.
While you're pulling that up, though, can you go to that list of things that we needed to, that they were asking for? I just want to make sure I've hit everything. And then the parking, that 1.25 bit with the parking, that's really just in the senior condo area,
Correct, that's just the senior, or
apartments.
the senior apartment.
senior apartment area.
Those have four parking stalls per unit.
Okay, so it's just the apartments.
High-rise apartment.
Okay, so, and that, yeah. Is there, how much guest parking is there in there then?
That'd be
Just the 0.25, okay.
So that'd be 50 units.
We have a broken down in the parking matrix. The biggest change is with the new code, or today's code, we have a requirement that guest parking be within 200 feet of the door. And then we have the requirement that you can't count parking in the driveways if it's multifamily.
How, this property is pretty close to our waterfront overlay too, right? How far out is that?
It is pretty close, but it's not that close, meaning
Okay.
it's, yeah. You have a whole development in between this. So you have the Public Works site and the North Shore development, and then you have Pony Express, and then you have properties and then the lake.
Okay, thanks.
So gradual transitions in the code states that it is the policy of the city council through exercising its zoning authority to transition high-intensity uses to help prevent the impacts of high-density uses on low-density areas, uses located on adjacent parcels.
So are we good?
The zoning has already been voted on with the condition that we approve the master development agreement, and there was a condition that there be a buffer. And so again, we can bring that back to you when we bring the master development agreement. That's something that you could look at and determine if what they're proposing is adequate. They're just proposing that we meet the code. And again, we're not necessarily looking at that tonight, but you will be looking at it at a future meeting.
Okay. I think that's it for me. I do like a lot of this. There's some weirdness in it that I'm like not super comfortable with some of it with the, my brain just fried, sorry, it's done. Anyways, thank you. I do like a lot of it. We do need some senior living and whatnot. Thank you. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Commissioner Spassky Burns. We'll go back to Commissioner Kilgore.
So I'm thinking, as far as the motion eventually that we'll get to, there are 10 conditions, and I'm okay with, or I'm thinking that we leave in 1, 2, 3, 7, 8, 10, I'm sorry, 1, 2, 3, 7, 9, 10. Sorry, 1, 2, 3. 3 is debatable probably because.
Choose one of the parking.
Yeah, right. Oh, and then, then,
4 and 5 offer 2 on.
right, exactly. So that's why I think we leave in at least, or are we good in leaving in 1, 2, 3, 7, 9, and 10? And then then the question is what to do with 4, 5, 6, and 8. Or,
I think 6 we felt pretty comfortable with, did we? That's the flat roofs.
so we could get rid of it then, right?
No,
Is
Wait,
that
wait, wait.
commercial?
So
6 is.
That's
that
the
you-
question, I guess.
You'll specify what the parking requirement would be, different, if it's different than the current code or different from what the application is asking for.
That's 4, I thought.
Does this match the staff report?
It should, but I took it right from the staff report, I thought, but.
It does not. You guys have added in
Oh,
parking
I
option.
can't read it because I don't have my glasses.
So what's up on the screen does not match what's in our packet. There's a parking option that is inserted in there. So parking shall meet the
Okay.
following ... That's not in our packet.
I'm going to take it out,
Yeah, I would recommend.
it
Yep.
there. So,
Do you have additional questions? I have some
Well,
questions.
so I guess, no, I don't, but I guess so far, I'm wondering if those are the ones that are up for, question, debate right now as to whether we leave those in or take them out. I think the ones that I said should be left in, but then number 3 might be, I don't know if all of you agree with that.
Can are you okay if I ask some questions and maybe it helps get us to that point? I appreciate Commissioner Kilgore, you directing us towards where we ultimately need to get to. One, I want to thank you as an applicant for your patience. This has obviously been multi-years in the making, right? A lot of conversations back and forth. And here you are 2 hours into this process, working with us to help us to make sure that we do what's right, both for you as an owner, both for the city. And that's the processes that we go through all of this. So just want to recognize your efforting on that half, on your behalf, or on behalf of the commission, I should say. That doesn't go unnoticed. So thank you. Also want to thank the city staff because it's not often we get a 130-page packet. And so we know that there's a lot going on here. And so we appreciate your patience in asking and answering questions tonight and helping us through this. For me, I think there's a couple of things that, again, I view this as not a give and take, but as a learning process together and things that maybe we can get better at and maybe that you can continue to consider. I think some of those things that maybe we could get better at that you've brought to our attention. I'm going to do the easy first. I have a Ziploc bag in my garage that's about that thick, full of plants that I've put in my yard that have died. And we do have a problem in our city. And I think it's foolish on our part just to write a code, so you have to have this without really realizing like the conditions that we are facing in Saratoga Springs, because we have terrible soil and we have terrible secondary water sources, at least where I live. So I think it behooves us as a city to think around the code itself a little bit and how we might work towards enshrining the ability for a developer to approach the city versus asking for continual exceptions, because that's the thing that we don't want to do, is to come back and revisit these things versus the opportunity for you to point to something in the code. And that's on us. And I think that's an easier one that we can look at. You saw earlier today how we were amending some of those things. I think that's one thing that we could look at. I agree with you on the flat building as well, on the flat roof. I think that's another thing that we should look at. If you as a developer can bring an attractive product to us like you have, where you have variation in the depth and the width, and it's not just a flat wall, which we've seen in other cities, right, on a flat roof, that's horrible. We don't want that. And that's probably why the code was written the way that it was. But if we can manage to draft something through the code that allows you to bring a product like I believe we're all better served. And it makes sense to me to get those condensers off of the ground and to hide them up top. I think that's an attractive proposal for residents. So that's another thing where I think we could learn as a city to start looking at language and the ability, instead of coming and asking, Mother, may I, you have the ability to say, we're meeting it and here it is. I would disagree strongly around the density language. I know you mentioned like, hey, if you look at the way that language is written, I think we meet it. And if you could pull it back up, Sarah, I'll tell you why I disagree strongly. And you're talking to a law school dropout, right? So this is why I disagree strongly, because there's an and in the middle of that clause. So it says an increase of up to 2 units if the property is adjacent to future or existing transit stop or corridor and opportunities are provided in the neighborhood. I believe you're providing those opportunities. Second half of that, after the end, I believe you're there. I agree with you. I do not see quite yet how you're there on the front half of that sentence, if that makes sense. Because we don't know, and we're kind of crossing our fingers, and we have said, hey, we hope to have these conversations, or we're having these conversations with UTA, and we're looking for some sort of assurances more than just a conversation has taken place or multiple conversations have taken place. So because of that, I do believe that the city is reasonable in asking what they're asking for in the condition, and that's up for debate, obviously, for all of you. That ultimately, possibly, depending on where things go tonight, goes to the city council, right? We're just providing a recommendation.
And we're trying to help get that satisfied as well.
Right. And I don't think that's the thing. I do not think you're against us. I think we both have the same vision. We both recognize the same goal.
Yeah.
It's just if we just start going on a whim or assurances, then we really open ourselves and the city up, not just here, but elsewhere with other developers, right? And we leave ourselves sort of these breadcrumbs along the way that people, they pick them up. And you know this because you deal with multiple cities and agencies. I think we just have to be very careful there and recognize that there's an and it's asking for two things in that requirement. And I think it's well enough drafted that way to be able to do that. And I think that's what the city's asking for with the condition. I struggle a little bit like around the parking issue because it's almost as if asking to have your cake and eat it too. That you like this, but you don't like that. And this was passed at this point and now we want to see it changed. That's a tough one. And I think you have to kind of be respectful of the city in terms of seeing what has changed over the explosive years of growth which we have faced, the large and vocal constituencies in our city that drive and see the corridors and see parked and crowded streets, and density is not going anywhere anytime soon, and it's something we just have to recognize as a city, and parking brings with it a challenge, or excuse me, density brings with it parking challenges. I think you're doing your best to mitigate that. I really do. And I think if we look at it comprehensively as a whole, I don't know, you all are smarter than me, but you have a total number of units which you're proposing into what you have set forth here for us tonight. You'd mentioned that if you have to go back to that, or if you have to abide by the current parking standard, that changes things for you. But I didn't quite hear how much, or I don't know if you've actually looked at that and said, oh, this knocks off out of our, did you say 700 units through here? Did I hear that tonight?
I can answer what it'll knock off. It actually, if we have to add additional parking, the green space between some of inside the pods would have to be turned into parking. There's no other place to put it.
Okay.
Frankly, we're just not feeling that's necessary here because of what we are providing.
Okay. So that's essentially how you would address it then. And then you would still meet the code. If you did that, though, then you still meet the code requirements for green space. Is that true, Sarah? They would still meet the code for green space if they
Oh, I have no idea. We would need a new plan.
Can I?
Yeah, please.
So I did the math on it. You need 18 acres of green space, and you have proposed 24 acres of green space right now. So I think changing some of that parking or green space to parking would still meet the requirements, the code requirements, but that
We
is
don't
all.
know for sure, I guess, is the answer. But that's, I'm glad you can do math. That's why I went to law school, so I didn't have to do math. No. So I think that's just worth considering. To be honest with you, I have really mixed feelings about really tight, just to check a box to get green space, and actually how usable green space is in the process, because I think we see that a lot in plans. It's like, look, I'm meeting your requirements, and it's a 10 by 10 square with one slide on it and a staircase for kids to climb up. To me, like, I don't know. That's preference, and I try to avoid the preference, right? And I understand. So you meet the code, and so I think if you can meet the code, still put the parking in, I see it as a win-win, to be honest. And I don't know if Grandma and Grandpa get all that much fired up that they're not out there on the grass, because I don't see Grandma and Grandpa out on the grass too often, active seniors aside. I think for my parents, this is again just my experience, my parents are more happy that we got a place to park when we come see them and we're inside. So that's again just preference, but I think you could have a win-win fairly easily depending upon how that land shifts to still meet the code and meet the new parking requirements. And I think you avoid what will ultimately happen, which is very congested areas with cars everywhere. in such a development of this magnitude. So all that said, I think it would be really good for us to go to the conditions. Sarah, if you don't mind pulling that up. You're getting really good at bouncing through this packet, by the way. So that's all I have. If that has spurred any additional thoughts or comments from the commission, I would welcome those. Otherwise, I think Commissioner Kilgore had gotten us on a fairly good path in terms of looking at these conditions. Bearing in mind that this is option one under approval, and there's nothing that precludes us from recommending continuance or recommending denial. And then it's my understanding, Sarah, that the city would just take that, the council takes it up either way, right? Just because this is just a recommendation from.
Right.
So I'll just put that out for the council as well. Commissioner Kilgore.
Yeah, I don't think there's any reason to have to continue. I think we just, vote on it and just decide on which conditions we agree, or maybe some of us will disagree, but if we could kind of come to a consensus on most of these conditions, then we could make a proposal, and then if you don't agree, then just don't agree. But I don't think we have to hold up the applicants any longer. I think we could just go with what we know what we have to do. And that's why I think, again, I'll just bring this up, 1, 2, and 3 should stay in. And I'm saying 3 because I believe that we should follow the code. You may not agree with that. And then also 7 should stay in, just like as Commissioner Ryan said, we don't, I agree with I think they should be allowed to not put evergreens in. And then also 9 and 10. We should be okay. There is no issue with actually 9 anymore because the applicant is going with 45 feet. So there's no reason to have that condition in there. And then obviously 10 needs to be in there.
And condition 8, the setbacks, you skipped that one? Is that one you want to talk about?
So those are the ones I'm wondering, what should we do about, are we okay with setbacks? I'm okay with it myself.
I believe when we revisited that, we're inside all the setbacks.
Okay, so that means, so we should leave it in then.
Yeah, I would. Yeah, we need to leave it in, but I don't believe there is much. Commissioner Spasti Burns, I think, had the most consternation with that, but otherwise, I think everyone else is okay.
Okay, so at least maybe for the initial motion, we leave 8 in as well. So that leaves 4, 5, and 6. What should we do about that?
Are we just doing open? Okay, so I'm good with 6. The 6 is the roof part.
so, too.
I actually think that we should put condition 3 to a vote for the commission members and then see where everyone stands and then go forward with leaving it in or taking it out.
I do have a question, and I think we could probably motion with those in, and then if it fails on the motion with that in there, then we could readdress as well. Would be a way to capture the voting. On the condition, this is for staff, on the roof articulation for the senior housing shall substantially match the conceptual elevations. Is that meaning like what they proposed in the plans, or else they have to go the pitch roof route? Is that, so your staff is okay with what they're proposing?
Yes.
Yes, because in there, it does have that language that these are conceptual, not guaranteed. However, what's in there looks nice, that's an opinion, right? But if it was just a square box, that would change the aesthetics.
So I guess that's my question, like, is that strong enough for staff to feel like you can lean back onto that and say, we want what was promised in terms of what's been presented? Does that make sense? Is that clear enough between both parties to say, this is what we're looking for?
For the apartment unit?
For the flat roof. So the reason why we like the flat roof is because you guys are offering something that's architecturally pleasing.
Expert in the room already, who already helped us through the process in Pleasant Grove, and that's development director, because Ken was right there in the design of that. And I think we pretty much did what we promised, right?
Were you just checking to make sure he was awake over there?
Got him.
Great job, Ken. No, that's,
He did.
and that's always good. That's things we can lean on, right? And so we appreciate you actually pointing that connection out.
And we
because-
have built this building before, so it is a design we like.
Yeah. I think, again, the concern for the city is we've seen plenty of flat roof buildings that are just flat, right, on the wall, and that doesn't help anyone. So I just want to make sure that the staff feels very comfortable with that language, that that's something you can rely on to come back to get what we're asking for. So I'm good with that then.
Looks like we're leaving everything in that we haven't decided on 4 and 5.
Eileen, do you want preferences at this point, or you want additional discussion?
Well, I was just wondering, are they mutually exclusive, the two of them, 4 and 5?
They are.
Yeah, it's one
It
or
would
the
be
We have to
one or
pick-
the other.
Yeah.
So which one? Just pick one and then we'll just vote on it?
Well, which one, 4 requires them to have how many parking spaces and 5 requires them to have how many parking spaces?
The code that was in place previously allowed the driveways to count as guest parking. So they would, and we require 0.25 per unit of guest parking. And so for every 4 units, you need 1 guest stall. They would need more guest parking.
So there's a matrix showing the current code, parking requirements, and what they're requesting. But I'm not quite sure if what they're requesting is exactly what the former code was articulating.
I'm just not scrolling back to that page again. I'll never make it back to where we are.
I think also an issue is if we grant that they can use the old code, then going forward with new developers, it means that they don't have to follow the current code. They could just say, well, when we planned it, this is what the code said, even though they hadn't applied for it.
In our first meetings with the city, that was what the code was. So that's not going to pop up very often because, like I said, we've been working on this for over 2.5 years almost, so.
We actually worked that out with the previous planner.
Okay, yeah, no, understood. But we have had other applicants where they say, but we planned it this way. We couldn't help it that the code changed. But it's like, the code says that if you don't have your application in, then you have to go with the old code. And so again, if we grant that exception, then what are we going to do with all the other developers as well? You know, I mean, potentially, every time there is an inconvenient new code written. And again, what is our justification? Just because we like you, what's the justification? So that's the consequence of what we decide here.
And you're probably not going to have a lot of that opportunity.
Well, even if just one more.
This is a specific neighborhood plan, and you just don't have that many in the city.
No, the idea is, do we allow you to follow the old code before the application? Because the code says that the code applies at the point of when you apply. So it has nothing to do with the neighborhood. It has to do with, when you apply and what code was enforced at the time. Yeah. So.
We had a different opinion from our city attorney.
Okay, that's good. For the discussion.
Oh, his opinion was that you're not vested until you have a preliminary plat.
Right, and we're not discussing vesting, we're discussing their request. So the city staff opinion is that they're not vested to the code in place at the time they applied. That's why it's coming forward to you as a request.
Right, so I mean, I want to make the decision on, or the recommendation on the request based on, what code says. That's we take an oath as commissioners to follow the code, not to follow, not to follow developers or residents. The city council, of course, they are voted in by their constituents, so they have a lot more of that leeway. And I'm just thinking in terms of the future. So how do I justify making those exceptions? Yeah. Anyway, so should we go with, like the number 3 one? I think that is the code, and so we put that in as a condition. And then if you don't like that, then in the past we had to, or sometimes the chair would ask, why did you vote against it? And that way you could give your justification why you decided to go against code. So I think that's why we should put number 3 in. And then is it number 4 that follows the code, or? No, 5. It's number 5. So we take 4 out, and then that means 1, 2, 3, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 are all in.
Thank you, Commissioner Kilgore. Commissioner Wilden, you had your mic. We'll go to you, and then I've got a question as well on one condition.
Thank you, and I appreciate, Ken, your comments there. I think there's some wisdom. The city council was part of those discussions, and we weren't, so we're limited. But the city council does make the final decision, and they can recall those conversations. So I think we need to be a little more safe, and they can easily make that change. So I agree with you.
That's a good thought. Thank you, Commissioner Wilden. I do have a question. Is condition 9 needed because we cleared that up in terms of the building height and recognized that it was a typo?
It doesn't have to, well, right now, the document in front of you has
Because it
the
hasn't been corrected?
typo.
Yeah.
So the correction hasn't been made yet.
That's just an additional projection, and we're all to an agreement already that that'll just be. Okay.
One more thing then is that the MR zone can allow on page 7 that we talked about. Do we want to add that as a condition?
Oh, yeah. Do we need to add that as a condition? Maybe we should. Or did you already take it as a note? This was the,
You can certainly add it. There's no harm in adding that, the
Yeah, I guess-
correct page 7 general description
that's true, because I don't know
regarding density.
how public the neighborhood plan goes, and I don't want that to say that that's what the code allows.
So do we want to
So do you have
word
language
that?
then around your notes that we could?
This can allow,
It should be can allow, not does allow.
right.
Okay, so maybe we just want to put MR zone states it can allow, not does allow. Is that,
I think that I wrote down the language says as a matter of fact, so I don't have that page
Oh,
up.
that was just my comment.
Oh, okay,
It sounds like it's a matter of fact as opposed to,
I see.
yeah.
does that verbiage fix that? If well, I'm
Because
not,
it does allow it, but it does not.
can allow, but not does allow?
Yeah.
I think
just
we
wanna-
copied the code when we wrote it down, so I think that's what the code states. Am I correct, Sarah?
I
No.
couldn't tell you off the top of my
No,
head.
the code says 8 units, unless you meet 3, one of the 3
I mean,
exceptions.
We're fine
Or-
making that edit to the thing. I thought we copied what was in the code already, so.
Okay.
That, I mean, we're not opposed to making that
Okay,
edit.
yeah.
I'm not making the motion because I'm voting against it, so.
Okay, any additional comments or questions from the commission?
By the way, the code says up to. It doesn't say can or may, or it says up to. The council has the discretion to increase the overall blended density to up to 12 units per acre with these considerations. So it doesn't, so anyhow.
So we can make that edit to say what you guys need to say.
It's just that the neighborhood plan says the code allows. So, and
Right.
it doesn't unless you meet,
It's a good clarification, especially because small items like that can cause issues in the future.
especially if it goes the public reads it and.
So it is a good clarification to add.
Okay. This is how the sausage gets made. It's pretty awesome. All right, I am happy to entertain a motion.
Shoot. Okay. I move that the Planning Commission forward a recommendation to the City Council to approve the Cliff Lake Neighborhood Plan located at approximately 900 East Pioneer Crossing with the following findings and conditions in the staff report, with the changes that the number 4 condition, parking requirements shall meet the code in place at the time the rezone application was made, be removed, and that the neighborhood plan, I don't remember what the paragraph was.
Page 7, general description.
Page 7, general description, changes the language to can allow instead of does allow.
Thank you, Commissioner Kilgore. We have a motion. Do we have a second?
I second.
I have a question on the motion.
Okay, we have a second and we have a discussion on the matter. Go ahead.
Did you address number 4 and 5?
He did, yeah.
Okay,
He
thank
said
you.
that
I missed-
4 be taken out, 5
Thank you.
is included. Thank you for the question. Great question. And we have a second, we do have the second. Any additional discussion on the motion? Hearing none, we'll take a vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
Nay.
Motion passes. I believe everyone was in favor but for Commissioner Sprosty Burns. Commissioner Sprosty Burns, would you like to make a comment on your nay vote?
Yeah, I do not feel that the way the code is written, that the applicant meets the code requirements, specifically the "and" piece of that. That is all.
Excellent. Thank you, Commissioner Sprosty Burns. And thank you all for that. Great discussion, I'm sure, ahead at the city council for all of you. So you got a approval recommendation here with some conditions for us, which I think is a win-win for everyone and keeps the ball moving forward for you. So thank you for your time tonight.
Thank you.
Thank you much.
Thank you.
He was wide awake. He was definitely not sleeping. So it was well done. Okay, let's go ahead and take a quick bio break if everyone is okay with that. I have 8:05 on my watch. Let's come back at 8:10. All right, we're a highly efficient bunch. We're 1 minute back, actually, prior to the 8:10 time that I declared. So 8:09, we're going to come back in. We've got moving on from the public hearing items to business items. Our first item under business is City Booster Station site plan located southeast of the intersection of Pony Express Parkway and Mountain View Corridor. City initiated.
Thank you. This is a city-initiated site plan application. I'll pull up the location here so you get an idea of where that is. You can see here it's located at the intersection southeast of the intersection of Pony Express and Mountain View Corridor there. The site is located on 3.87 acres and is located within a planned community zone. That planned community zone is the City Center District Area Plan. This proposed use is for a public utility building, will be city-owned and maintained. I'll show you the elevations here in a minute, as well as the site plan and landscape plan proposed with this. Did want to make a plug real quick since it wasn't shown specifically on the plans, but that detention pond that you can see on the eastern portion of the property is also part of this request. So here's the site plan for the property. This is focusing in on the pump house portion of the property, that western portion. You'll see there it's surrounded by, proposed to be surrounded by a 6-foot black PVC coated chain link fence. This is consistent with other pump houses here in the city. We'll have access to the property that will be asphalt, and then within the fence area that isn't asphalt, it will be it will contain gravel. There's some generators you see there on the western portion of the property. There is one that is currently planned with this initial construction and one that will be added at a future date. Looking at the landscaping, like I said, there'll be cobble rock within the fence. Everything else will be hydro-seeded with the native seed mix outside of the fenced area. These are the proposed elevations for the building. It'll be largely CMU, 2 different colors. You see there's a vertical strip along the top. I believe that one will be the chocolate coloring, and then the rest of it will be tan with a metal roof. And then there's the north and south portions of the elevations. The elevations and landscaping, you'll note that there's not much there. These are allowed per code. Code states that public utility buildings in specific are allowed certain deviations from the code if they are not intended for occupancy. This building is not intended for occupancy, and so it meets those and thus complies with all of city code. With that, I'll stand for any questions you may have.
Awesome. Thank you for the presentation this evening. I'm happy to open it up to comments from the commissioners. We have Commissioner Hill.
David, across the street, Pony Express, there's another building that looks kind of like that. Is that a utility building of the city? Is that a pump station?
You know, okay.
Yes.
Yes.
It is pumping water for Central Water Conservancy District. So I don't know if it's ours. It's probably theirs.
Okay, so, but that is what it probably will look like. It's not intrusive, it kind of fits in, but it's on the corner. It'd be just to the north, across the street, right?
Correct.
Yes.
Yeah, okay. Thank you. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Commissioner Hill. Commissioner Kilgore.
So this is supposed to be the city center. Do we have to build this here?
We do. So these need to be located at certain locations, and the location has been evaluated by our city engineers, and this is the best location. If we move it to other locations, it will cost a lot more money.
Okay. So I guess our city center plans are going to include this building in there. Okay, all right.
City center property is much more expensive and it needs to be used, the elevation.
Well, sorry, city center specifically is north of this. The future city center will be on Pioneer Crossing, and this is just south of Pony Express. However, we do expect to see commercial development.
Okay, all right, just wanted to ask. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Kilgore. We'll go back to Commissioner Hill.
And David, one other question. We talk about that retention pond that is over a little bit more to the east. that is there just because it needs to be, correct? And so in reality, this pumping station's close to that. It kind of has a utilitarian usage on that corner anyhow that's not going to be developed. So from my perspective, going by that every day, I just don't see it. I see it the best use of that property right now, from my perspective.
Correct.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Commissioner Hill. Any other comments from the commission? I have a quick question. So the area just to the north of this was kind of that weird, it's got a weird shape to it. Who owns that? Do we know who owns that?
It's the church who owns that, and that's an irrigation pond.
Okay, yeah, I see the irrigation pond. So it'd be north and then west of the irrigation pond where the land actually is. Do we know what will happen with that area right there? Or what it's zoned for currently?
Directly to the west of the irrigation pond.
So if you're just kind of go diagonally up from where we're going to build the booster station, directly west of the irrigation, that larger irrigation pond. Does that make sense? And before you get to the future Mountain View corridor,
So that's,
what Hill is.
it's all part of the same district area plan, and it's all under the same ownership by the church. The property all surrounding this is all part of church-owned property.
Okay,
As far as the use of the property, that hasn't been determined at this
premature.
time, yeah.
Okay. That's all the question I had. I'm happy to entertain a motion.
I move the Planning Commission forward a recommendation for approval of the requested site plan for Saratoga Springs Water Booster Number 8, located at the southeast intersection of Tony Express Parkway and Mountain View Corridor, with the findings and conditions in the staff report below.
Thank you, Commissioner Kilgore. We have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
Was that Commissioner Mangum? Or Commissioner Hill? Commissioner Hill? Sorry, I was leaning back. I couldn't see. Thank you, Commissioner Hill. We have a motion and a second. Do we have any additional discussion on the matter? Hearing none, I'd be happy to take a vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. Thank you. All right, we are moving on to item number 2 under business, which is approval of the minutes from January 25th, 2024. If you have any edits or comments, now would be the time to make those. Otherwise, I'd be happy. Oh, I hit the button and you hit the button. There you go.
I just had one. On line 167, it said, where are we? Oh, yeah. It's the very first line on the top of the page. The first, or the next sentence, it says, "It is now planned as a 2-phase project." I think it should be, "It is now planned." So I wouldn't normally bring that up, but planned really does make it, it gives it the opposite meaning of, I think, what was intended. So I want to bring that up.
So did you guys catch which line he was on?
167.
And I shouldn't say you guys, sorry. You guys are, I just said it again. Staff is awesome. There, I just made up for it. Did staff catch which line he was on? Okay. Guess we'll amend, so with the note to amend that, I'd be happy to entertain a motion unless there's any other comments.
I'll move that we accept the minutes as presented with the one exception that has been noted and will be corrected.
Thank you, Commissioner Hill. We have a motion. Do we have a second?
I'll second that.
Thank you, Commissioner Wildren. We have a second. Any additional discussion on the matter? Hearing none, I'll go ahead and take a vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion. I'd like to just, before we get to Commissioner comments, just excuse Commissioner Sprosty Burns for a family, just as an FYI, so. All right, we will go to Commissioner comments. We've worn everybody out tonight. I'm going to close Commissioner comments and move to Director's report.
Okay, the most recent city council meeting was 2 nights ago. Sometimes these happen in the same week. So what got passed was the Fat Cats cell tower, or the one right by Fat Cats, right? The crossing cell tower. The code amendment for the SPAR distance to residential was tabled for further clarification. The parking code amendment that allows mixed use and mixed waterfront to have parking further away, like parking lots on the edges. That was passed. And then the North Cove Development Preliminary Plat and Site Plan was passed. And your next meeting is February 22nd, and it is looking like it will be a busy meeting. And just a reminder, we do have the fall conference in Cedar City, April 8th, 9th, and May 8th, 9th, and 10th. And if any of you are interested, the city would cover the registration fee. Okay. And so, and then a reminder on your annual training to keep on top of your annual training. There's 4 categories throughout the year that you need to meet, and then at the end of the year, you submit that. So just a reminder about those.
It's not December yet, so.
I know.
Just kidding. That's a great reminder. Thank you, Sarah. I appreciate that. And I would recommend for the other commissioners, if you've never been to one of the planning conferences, the ones I've been able to go to, I found tremendous benefit from the sessions that are provided, the education sessions that are provided. This one's a little bit different though, because it's not in Lehigh now, it's in Cedar City this year, I believe.
And I should add, there's 2 a year. There's one in the spring and one in the fall. The last one was in Ogden. The one prior to that might have, anyway, they try to have them in the southern part of Utah and then the northern part of Utah. So if you don't go to the one in the spring, there will be an opportunity for one in the fall. I don't believe the location has been chosen, but it may be closer. Oh, Provo.
Provo.
Okay, so if you don't go to the spring one, there will be one in Provo. So.
And just to let it be known that they have numerous classes for the volunteers, so planning commission, that you get credit for, because we need that, but also you get to network. It's well worth your time and effort.
Yep, thank you, Commissioner. I agree with that. So I warned you guys this was going to happen. I'm going to be out of town on the 22nd. Ken, will you be here? Yeah, so do you mind taking over the duties for that evening? Thank you, I appreciate that. I'm batting 50%, which gets me in the Hall of Fame in a lot of sports, so sorry about that, but I will be in Florida for that date. Thank you all tonight. Thank you for the discussion tonight. Thank you for your patience tonight. We greatly appreciate it. We learn a lot from you as staff with the way that you professionally handle situations like that, and it's just appreciated that we are able to be a part of that. So thank you all. We appreciate it. And with that, we will adjourn for the evening.